I've stood face to face with my own daughter and seen the fury of a stranger in her eyes, while the man who had poisoned her heart against this family stood right beside her. My choice in that moment was simple, but it was also impossible. Let go to save myself, or walk right into the eye of the storm and risk losing everything to save her. My name is Sarah. I'm 72 years old, from Denver, Colorado, and this is the story of how my family shattered into a million pieces, and how, by some miracle, we tried to piece it all back together. Now, before I go on, if this story resonates with you, I'd sure appreciate it if you'd take a moment to follow this program. And more importantly, please, leave a comment below. Do you believe some family bonds, once broken, can never be mended? Or can love truly conquer all? Your stories, you see, they give strength to the rest of us. I live in Denver, Colorado. I love this city. Love the way you can feel all 4 seasons in your bones. Fall here is just magnificent, when the aspen trees up in the mountains turn into this brilliant sea of gold, but it's also a reminder. Just like those leaves, some things that were once so bright and alive in my life, well, they eventually faded and fell away. My daughter, Olivia, she was once the most brilliant golden leaf in my whole life. For you to understand the tragedy that came later, you have to know about the family we were before. My husband, Michael, passed away from a sudden heart attack when I was just 45. It was a terrible shock, one that left a gaping hole in my life and 2 kids in their tender years. Olivia was 14 then, and little Leo was only 6. I, an ER charge nurse, was used to dealing with other people's life and death moments every single day, but I was completely broken by the death of my own beloved. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had 2 children to raise. Olivia, my artistic, free-spirited daughter, and Leo, her calm, adoring younger brother, shared a deep bond. She was his protector, his hero, in those early years after their father's death. Their bond was the strongest thread holding our little family together after we lost Michael. Those years were tough, I won't lie, but we leaned on each other. I worked my tail off at the hospital, and Olivia, after her rebellious teenage moments, became my partner. She helped me take care of Leo, helped keep the house running. Some nights, I'd come home from a long shift, just bone-tired, and find a plate of warm food and a cup of tea she'd left for me on the table. Those small gestures, they were my everything. Time marched on, and my kids grew up. Leo became a smart young man, a star student, especially in the sciences. Olivia graduated from high school and went to community college for graphic design. She was still that free spirit, hopping from job to job, a barista, a gallery assistant, a freelance web designer. I never pushed her to fit into any mold. All I ever wanted was for her to be happy. And then, when Olivia was 22, she met Vincent. Looking back on it now, I can see all the subtle little warning signs on the very first day I met him, the kind of signs a mother, so desperate to see her child happy, just willfully ignores. Olivia brought him home for Sunday dinner. Vincent was charming, with slicked-back hair and a polished smile. He brought wine, called me Miss Sarah, and seemed perfect, too perfect. But I noticed his possessive grip on Olivia's chair and the cold flicker in his eyes when he silenced her. But there was something off. As an ER nurse, you're trained to observe. I noticed the way he always kept one hand on the back of Olivia's chair, a subtle, possessive gesture. I saw how he gently cut her off when she started to tell a slightly rebellious joke from her school days. "Darling," he chuckled, "let's save that story for later." His smile was still warm, but his eyes, just for a second, had a flicker of coldness. Olivia blushed and fell silent immediately. At the time, I told myself I was being too sensitive, that it was just a man who loved my daughter and was looking out for her. I saw how happy Olivia was. She laughed more, talked more. She looked at Vincent with this adoring, almost worshipful gaze. My daughter, who'd always been a wild, untamable horse, seemed to have found someone who could rein her in. And I, in my motherly foolishness, thought that was a good thing. They married a year later, when Olivia was 23. It was a beautiful, small outdoor wedding, pretty as a picture. Vincent seemed like the ideal husband. He worked in investments, always dressed sharp, drove a fancy car. He took Olivia on trips, bought her expensive gifts. Olivia quit her freelance design work. "Vincent says I don't have to work so hard anymore," she told me, beaming. "He wants to take care of me." And that's when the first hairline cracks started to appear. So small you could barely see them, but they were enough to make me feel a deep, unsettling chill. First, it was the phone calls asking for money. Olivia had never been a big spender, but about 6 months after the wedding, she started calling me with strange requests. "Mom," her voice was hesitant on the other end, Could you possibly lend me $500? There's a little issue with my credit card, and Vincent's out of town on business." $500. That's not pocket change. "Is everything okay, honey? Do you need it for something urgent?" "Oh, no, it's nothing, Mom. Just some things I wanted to buy. I'll pay you back as soon as Vincent gets home." I sent her the money. A week later, another call. This time, it was $800. "The car needed emergency repairs," she said. I started to worry. "Olivia, is everything all right? Is Vincent's business doing okay?" "It's fine, Mom. It's great, actually. It's just a little cash flow issue sometimes. Don't you worry." She said it all very fast and then hung up. Then, I started to see the changes in her appearance. My family has a tradition: dinner together on the first Sunday of every month. It's been an unbreakable rule since the kids were little. Olivia started showing up late, or canceling at the last minute. And when she did come, she looked different. She'd lost a noticeable amount of weight. Her usually rosy skin was sallow. Her vibrant blue eyes were sunken and had dark circles under them. She started wearing these baggy, long-sleeved sweaters, even when it wasn't particularly cold out. With a nurse's eye, I knew these signs. These were not the signs of happiness. One Sunday dinner, when Vincent was once again absent due to a last-minute meeting, I couldn't take it anymore. Olivia was barely touching her food, just pushing a piece of chicken around her plate with her fork. "You're not feeling well, Olivia?" I asked gently. She jumped, startled. "I'm fine, Mom." "You look so thin. Are you eating enough?" "I'm on a diet." Leo, who was 16 by then, a tall and observant young man, spoke up. "What kind of diet makes you look like a ghost? I tried calling you all last week and couldn't get through." Olivia shot her brother a glare. "I was busy. Adults have things to worry about, Leo. Not like you." Her voice had a strange, sharp edge to it. The warmth between them seemed to have vanished, replaced by an invisible wall. "Are you hiding something from us?" Leo asked bluntly. He was always like that, straight to the point. "No!" Olivia nearly shouted, slamming her fork down on the plate with a clatter. "Why is everyone grilling me like I'm some kind of criminal? I told you I'm fine." She stood up, pushed her chair back, and stormed off to the bathroom. Leo and I looked at each other, the worry plain in both our eyes. 10 minutes later, Olivia came back out, her eyes red but her face set in a look of forced calm. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I've just been under a lot of stress lately." I got up and went to her, wrapping my arms around her. Her body felt frail and bony in my embrace. I could feel every one of her vertebrae. "If something's wrong, you have to tell me, honey. I'm always here." She buried her head in my shoulder and was quiet for a long moment. I could feel her shoulders shaking. I thought she was about to break, that the dam was about to burst. But then, she took a deep, shuddering breath and gently pushed me away. "It's nothing, Mom. I'm just tired. I think I should probably head home early." And just like that, she left, leaving me and Leo with a half-eaten dinner and a growing dread that felt as heavy as a lead blanket. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about that long-sleeved sweater. When I'd hugged her, my sleeve had caught hers and pulled it up, just a bit. And in that fleeting second, I saw it. A dark purplish-blue bruise, right on her wrist. A bruise in a very strange shape. It looked like the fingerprints. As an ER charge nurse, I've seen hundreds, thousands of injuries. I know the difference between a bruise from an accidental bump and a bruise from being grabbed, from being squeezed. And the mark on my daughter's arm was the second kind. A cold dread snaked its way up my spine. Vincent, his perfect smile, his hand on the back of her chair, the way he cut her off. All those little pieces suddenly clicked into place in my mind, and they began to form a terrifying picture. I tried to push the thought away. It couldn't be. Vincent loved Olivia. Olivia was happy. Maybe she just bumped it somewhere. I tried to soothe myself with those lies because the truth was too horrific to face. The truth that I, her mother, a seasoned nurse, might have handed my own daughter over to a monster. But a mother's worry, once it takes root, it burns low and steady like a coal fire. It doesn't flare up in a big blaze, it just radiates a constant, searing heat that burns away your peace from the inside out. In the weeks that followed, things got worse. Olivia all but cut off contact. She stopped calling. When I called her, it would usually go to voicemail. If she did pick up, her voice was rushed, her answers clipped before she found an excuse to hang up. Leo felt the change most sharply. He and Olivia had a tradition. Every last Friday of the month, they'd go to the movies together, a habit they'd kept for years. But for 3 months straight, Olivia canceled at the last second. The third time it happened, Leo went straight to her apartment. He told me about it later that evening, the shock still fresh on his face. I rang the bell over and over, Mom, but nobody answered, even though I was sure someone was home, he said. I was about to leave when the door finally opened. It was Vincent. What did he say? I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. He said Olivia wasn't feeling well. He stood in the doorway blocking it so I couldn't get in. He was acting so weird, Mom. He was smiling, but his eyes weren't. He said, Olivia needs her rest, kid. Don't bother her anymore. The way he said it, like I was a stranger. And Olivia? Did you see her? Just for a second behind him. She was standing in the shadows. She didn't say a word. She looked scared, Mom. I called out, Olivia? But she just shook her head and stepped back. Then Vincent slammed the door in my face. Hearing that, I couldn't sit still any longer. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a 5-alarm fire. My daughter was in danger. The fear in Olivia's eyes that Leo described confirmed my absolute worst fears. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep watching from the sidelines, just hoping for the best. I called Olivia again and again. Finally, she answered. What is it, Mom? I'm busy. Her voice was flat, robotic. I need to see you, I said, my voice firm. Now, alone. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, and then a man's voice whispering in the background. Vincent's voice. I can't, Olivia said, her voice trembling. Then I'm coming over there. No, don't come here, she nearly screamed. Please, Mom, just leave it alone. Everything's fine. Olivia, I have to go. And she hung up. The dead phone still pressed to my ear. The quiet in my house felt deafening. I'd seen it 100 times in the ER. Battered women, covering their bruises, defending their abusers, trapped in an invisible cage of fear and dependency. I just never, ever thought my own daughter, my strong, free-spirited girl, would become one of them. I looked out the window. The last of the autumn leaves were falling, leaving the tree branches stark and skeletal against the gray Denver sky, just like my family. Once so warm and vibrant, but now a toxic wind had blown through, stripping away all the color and life, leaving only emptiness and the fear of a long, dark winter ahead. And I knew, with the cold certainty of a nurse diagnosing a terminal illness, that if I didn't do something, I was going to lose my daughter for good. The storm was only just beginning. It was the start of a chain of horrific events, a series of wrong choices and desperate acts that would change all of our lives. That was the moment I decided to face it head-on, not knowing that my actions would ignite a tragedy even more terrible than anything I could have ever imagined. The night after my talk with Leo, sleep was a stranger to me. In its place were these haunting, flickering images. I kept seeing the bruise on Olivia's wrist, flashing in the dark, a sickening purple. I saw the look of fear in her eyes that Leo described, a look I'd never seen in my wild, headstrong child. Denial wasn't an option anymore. That'd be like a nurse, ignoring the vital signs crashing on a monitor, useless and dangerous. When the sun came up over the Rockies, painting the Denver sky a pale pink, my heart was just gray. I sat in my kitchen, a cold cup of coffee in front of me. A plan started to form in my mind. A simple, direct plan, the way I'd always handled the chaos of the ER, stabilize the scene, assess the damage, and intervene directly. I couldn't go to her apartment that was Vincent's territory, her cage. I had to get her to neutral ground, someplace safe, someplace that belonged to our memories. There's a little coffee shop in Old Town called the Crooked Cup. It's got old brick walls, rustic wooden tables, and always smells like roasted coffee and fresh croissants. It was our sanctuary during Olivia's teenage years. Whenever she had trouble at school, a fight with a boyfriend, or just needed to talk, I'd take her there. We'd sit for hours over 2 hot chocolates, sharing everything. That place was filled with our laughter and our secrets. I hoped desperately that the familiar space could somehow break through the shell she had built around herself. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled to her name. Olivia, the name I'd chosen for her, meaning olive tree, a symbol of peace. The irony was bitter. I took a deep breath and hit call. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. I was about to give up when someone answered, but it wasn't Olivia's voice. Hello? Vincent's voice, smooth and cold. My heart seized. Vincent, this is Sarah. I'd like to speak with Olivia. Oh, Miss Sarah, he said, his tone still dripping with that fake politeness. So good to hear from you. Olivia's just in the shower. Can I take a message? No, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I'll wait. I heard muffled sounds on his end. He was covering the receiver, saying something. Then footsteps, and Olivia's voice came on, faint and distant. Mom? Olivia, it's me, honey. Is something wrong? I'm a little busy. It was that same robotic voice, like she was reading from a script. I want to see you. Can we go for coffee? At the Crooked Cup, remember? Just like the old days, I said, trying to make my voice sound as normal and warm as possible. Another pause. I could hear Vincent whispering instructions in the background. The words were indistinct, but the tone was commanding. I don't think I can, Mom, Olivia finally said. I have a lot to do today. Just for an hour, honey, I pleaded, feeling desperation creeping into my voice. I miss you so much. I have something I want to show you. It's important. I was lying. I had nothing to show her, but I needed an excuse. Another long silence. I could almost picture the scene. Olivia looking at Vincent, waiting for permission. Finally, she sighed. Okay, 1 hour. At 11. Okay, sweetie. I'll be waiting for you there. Okay, she said, and hung up immediately. No, goodbye, no, love you. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. I'd gotten the meeting, but it came with the sickening feeling of knowing my daughter had to ask her husband's permission just to have coffee with her own mother. I got to the Crooked Cup at 11:15. I chose our old table, the one in the corner by the window that looked out onto the cobblestone street. I ordered a chamomile tea to calm my nerves. The familiar smell of the place wrapped around me, but it didn't bring peace like it used to. Instead, it felt like a knife twisting in my memory. I remembered a 16-year-old Olivia, sitting in the very chair across from me now. She had rebellious pink streaks in her hair and thick black eyeliner. She was sobbing her heart out over her first breakup. I hate him. I hate all men, she declared, all while shoveling in a huge spoonful of chocolate cake. I had held her, let her cry on my shoulder, and told her that broken hearts heal, that she was stronger than she knew. I remembered a 20-year-old Olivia, sitting right here, her eyes shining as she told me her plans to drive across the country in an old van. I'm going to paint, and write, and just live free, Mom, she had said with this fiery passion. Now, as I sat waiting for my 24-year-old daughter, I wondered where that fire had gone. Who had put it out? At 11 o'clock sharp, the wooden door of the coffee shop creaked open, and Olivia walked in. My heart stopped for a second. She looked even worse than she had at that Sunday dinner. She was wearing a huge gray wool coat that came down almost to her knees, even though it was a sunny day. Her face was gaunt, with no makeup. Her beautiful honey-colored hair was dull and pulled back in a messy knot. But the thing that broke my heart was the way she carried herself. She was hunched over, her shoulders pulled in, her eyes fixed on the floor, as if she was trying to make herself as small and invisible as possible. My once proud, confident daughter now looked like a little bird with a broken wing. She scanned the room, and when her eyes met mine, I saw a flash of panic in them before she quickly masked it. She walked quickly to the table, pulled out the chair, and sat down without a word. "Hi, honey," I said, forcing a smile. "Hi, Mom," she mumbled, still avoiding my gaze. A waitress came over. "What can I get for you two?" "I'll have my usual," I said, then looked at Olivia. "Still want your hot chocolate with extra whipped cream?" It was a test, an attempt to connect with our past. She looked up, and for a split second, I saw the old Olivia in her eyes, a flicker of confusion, of longing. But then she shook her head. "Just a black coffee. No sugar," she told the waitress. My heart sank. Black coffee, no sugar, bitter and empty, just like her life seemed to be now. After the waitress left, an uncomfortable silence fell between us. The whir of the coffee grinder, the clinking of spoons, the chatter from other tables, it all seemed to come from another world. I decided to start soft. "So, how have you been?" "The same," she said flatly, her hands fidgeting with the edge of a paper napkin. "Have you been doing any drawing?" I asked, hoping to tap into her old passion. She shrugged. "I don't have time." "Is Vincent doing well?" At the mention of his name, I saw her shoulders tense up. "He's fine. His work is very busy." "You know, honey, you seem unhappy lately," I said, shifting directly to the point. "Who told you that?" "I'm perfectly fine," she said, looking up at me, and this time there was a defiant glint in her eyes. "I'm your mother, Olivia. I know when you're not okay," I said, my voice softening. "You've lost so much weight. You're so pale. What's going on?" The coffee arrived. Olivia quickly grabbed the hot mug like it was a lifeline. She blew on the steam rising from it, using the simple action to avoid my eyes. "I've already told you, Mom. I'm just stressed out. Vincent's job is high pressure, so I worry right along with him," she said, her voice flat, like she was reciting a memorized line. I took a deep breath. It was time. "And what about the bruise on your wrist? Is that from stress, too?" The second I said it, the air between us turned thick and heavy. Olivia froze. She slowly set her mug down, her hand trembling slightly. She looked at me, and this time, the defensiveness in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "Are you spying on me?" Her voice was as sharp as a knife. "I'm not spying on you. I saw it at Sunday dinner. Olivia, who did that to you?" She let out a laugh, a dry, bitter sound. "Did what? What are you talking about?" "I bumped into the edge of a door. You know how clumsy I am. Why are you turning a little thing into such a big deal?" "That wasn't a bruise from a bump," I said, my voice taking on the no-nonsense tone of a charge nurse who doesn't tolerate lies. "That was a handprint. I've seen injuries like that 1,000 times. Someone grabbed your wrist. Hard, was it Vincent?" "That's enough." She slammed her hand on the table, making the people at the next table jump and stare. "You can just stop right there. Why do you hate Vincent so much? You've disliked him from the very beginning." "I don't hate Vincent. I'm worried about you." "Worried about me? Or you want to control me?" She shot back, her voice cracking with agitation. "You can't stand to see me happy with a man who loves me and takes care of me, can you? You want me to be your little girl forever, always running home to cry to mommy." Her words were like needles stabbing at my heart. "Olivia, what are you talking about? I just want you to be safe." "I am safe," she hissed. "I've never been safer or more loved. Vincent is the best man I've ever met. He provides everything for me." "And you? All you do is judge? You look at him with suspicious eyes. You question me like a cop. You're trying to destroy my marriage." Tears started to well up in my eyes. "That's not true, honey. I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. But I see you changing. You're wasting away. You're not yourself anymore. Just look at you." "I'm growing up, Mom. I'm not a 16-year-old girl crying over some stupid boy anymore. I'm a married woman, and my family is Vincent." I reached my hand across the table, trying to take hers, but she snatched it away as if she'd been burned. "Come home with me," I whispered, a last, desperate plea. "Just for a few days. We can figure this out together. I'll help you. There are places that can help women who—" "What women?" She cut me off, her eyes blazing. "Battered women. You think I'm one of them? You think Vincent is some kind of monster? You're ridiculous." She shot to her feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I was wrong to come here. I thought you actually missed me. But no, You just wanted an excuse to attack my husband and ruin my life." "Olivia, don't go!" I begged, tears streaming down my cheeks. But she wasn't listening. She turned her back and strode toward the door, never once looking back. The wooden door slammed shut behind her, leaving me all alone in the noisy cafe. Her black coffee sat on the table, untouched. The pain inside me was too big. It overwhelmed everything. It wasn't just the pain of worry anymore. It was the pain of rejection. My daughter hadn't just denied the truth. She had denied my love, my concern. She had chosen her abuser over the mother who gave birth to her. I had failed. My plan, my attempt, all of it had gone up in smoke. Not only had I failed to pull her out, but I had pushed her even further away. Now, the wall between us was no longer invisible. It was built of anger and accusations. Finally, I managed to stand up and walk unsteadily out of the shop. The bright sunlight made me squint. The world outside was just carrying on as if nothing had happened. People were walking, talking, laughing. Only my world had just collapsed. Tears just flowed freely on the drive home. I cried for the daughter I was losing. I cried for my own helplessness. I had saved countless strangers in the emergency room, but I couldn't save my own child. When I got home, the door opened to reveal Leo waiting in the living room. He'd skipped his after-school practice. He took one look at my tear-streaked face, and without asking a single question, he understood everything. He walked over to me, said nothing, and just opened his arms and held me. And for the first time in so many years, I let myself fall apart. I, who had always been the rock of the family, crumbled in the arms of my 16-year-old son. I sobbed, crying out all the fear, pain, and desperation I had been holding inside for so long. Leo just held me quietly, patting my back gently. His hand was so steady, his shoulders felt so broad. He wasn't a little boy anymore. In that moment, he was the man of the house. When I'd calmed down, he led me to the sofa. He went to the kitchen and brought me back a glass of warm water. "You talked to her?" he asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. And she didn't listen. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I nodded again, fresh tears threatening to fall. Leo sat down beside me. He looked me straight in the eye, and in his, I saw no fear or confusion. Instead, I saw a cold determination, a maturity far beyond his 16 years. "We can't give up, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "If she won't listen to us, we have to find another way. He's doing something to her. We have to find out what it is. We have to save her." Leo's embrace that day was like a shot of adrenaline straight to my heart. It didn't make the pain go away, but it kept my heart beating, pumping a new resolve through my exhausted body. The failure at the coffee shop had taught me a bitter lesson. A direct confrontation would only make Olivia retreat deeper into her defensive cocoon, a cocoon woven from fear, Vincent's manipulation, and probably her own shame. We needed a new strategy. Leo and I sat down together that very evening, at the kitchen table that now felt so empty with just the two of us. Our dinner was cold, but our conversation was hot with urgency. "We can't talk to her anymore," Leo said, his voice certain. "Vincent's brainwashed her. She won't believe us." He was right. My daughter, the child I raised, now looked at me like I was the enemy. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice still hoarse from crying. "We can't just stand by and watch. We find proof," Leo answered, his eyes glinting with an adult sharpness. "We need to know who Vincent really is and what he's doing to her. If we have undeniable proof, maybe she'll wake up." His plan was bold, maybe even dangerous, but it was the only light in this suffocating darkness. I, a nurse, and Leo, a high school kid, were about to become reluctant detectives. Our mission: to unmask Vincent. The weeks that followed became a tense, secret investigation. By day, I was Sarah, the model charge nurse, calmly handling bloody emergencies. Leo was the star student, playing on the school basketball team. But when night fell, our house turned into a command center. Leo dug online and found Vincent's past suspiciously blank, a ghost with no history. I called Olivia's old friends, and one mentioned overhearing Vincent argue about a huge debt, explaining the money requests and stress. It explained Olivia's calls for money, their stress. Maybe Vincent wasn't as well off as he appeared. Maybe he was in serious financial trouble. Leo and I pieced the clues together. A man with no past, a mysterious debt, an alarming change in Olivia. The picture was becoming clearer and more terrifying. Vincent wasn't just controlling, he could be a con artist, and my daughter was trapped in the middle. It was then that Olivia's condition went into a freefall. She cut off contact completely. Her phone number was disconnected. When I drove by their apartment complex, the blinds were always drawn, giving the place a dark, imprisoned feel. Desperation began to gnaw at me. We had pieces, but we couldn't put them together without help from the inside. And then, an opportunity came, completely out of the blue. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just gotten home from a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. As I checked the mail, tucked between the bills and junk mail was an unstamped envelope that had been hastily shoved in the slot. The handwriting on it was Olivia's. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tore it open. Inside was a scrap of paper torn from a notebook, with just a few lines scrawled in a rushed, shaky hand. Thursday, 3 p.m., Washington Park. By the fountain. Don't tell Vincent. Don't call. No greeting, no explanation. Just a place, a time, and a warning. I read the note over and over, a mix of hope and fear churning in my stomach. Why the sudden message? Why the secrecy? Had she finally realized the truth and was reaching out for help? Or was this some kind of trap? I showed the note to Leo that evening. He shared my mixed feelings. "This is like something out of a movie," he said, his face grim. "She's in real trouble. She can't use a phone. She has to sneak a handwritten note." "Should I go?" I asked, a part of me still hesitant, afraid of another painful rejection. "You have to go," Leo replied firmly. "This could be our only chance. But you can't go alone. He could be watching her. I'm coming with you." "No, it's too dangerous. If Vincent finds out." "I'm not letting you walk into danger by yourself." He cut me off, his gaze unwavering. "I'll stay back and watch. If anything looks wrong, I'll call 911 immediately. We have to protect each other." I looked at my 16-year-old son, and my heart swelled with a painful mix of pride and sorrow. His childhood had been stolen from him. Instead of worrying about tests and dates, he was planning how to protect his mother and rescue his sister. That Thursday, the sky over Denver was a clear, gentle blue, a perfect day for a walk in the park. But for me, the air was thick with a suffocating tension. At Washington Park, Olivia arrived late, disguised in a hoodie, her face bruised. In a rushed whisper, she confessed Vincent's debts, abuse, and threats. "I want to leave, but he controls everything." We planned her escape for midnight behind her apartment. Hearing that, a cold rage rose in me, overriding the pain. He wasn't just torturing my daughter, he was using me and Leo to threaten her. "Listen to me, Olivia," I said, my voice firm. "Everything is going to be okay. Tonight, after Vincent is asleep, pack a small bag. Just the essentials. Your ID, a few clothes. At midnight, I will be at the end of the alley behind your apartment building. You come out, I will take you home. Our home." "But what if he finds out?" she whispered, her voice full of fear. "He'll kill me." "He won't find out," I said with conviction. "We'll do this quietly. Once you're home, we'll go to the police station in the morning. We'll get a restraining order. He won't be able to hurt you anymore." Olivia looked up at me, a fragile sliver of hope in her tear-filled eyes. You'd really do that?" "I would do anything to protect you," I said, holding her tighter. "You're my daughter." We sat like that for another minute. Olivia seemed to calm down a little. "I have to go now," she said, wiping her tears away. "I've been gone too long." She stood up, pulling on her hood and sunglasses. Before she left, she looked back at me. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away quickly, disappearing back into the park crowd, once again a small, hunched-over shadow. I stayed on the bench, trying to get my heart rate back to normal. The plan was set. Tonight, I was breaking my daughter out of hell. I looked over at Leo. He was still sitting there, as still as a statue. He had seen it all. When I stood and walked toward him, he stood up too. His face under the brim of his cap was tense, but his eyes were resolute. "Tonight," he said, his voice low, "we bring her home." That night, It felt like all of Denver was holding its breath with us. Dark clouds rolled in, hiding the moon and stars. The wind picked up, carrying the chill of an approaching storm. Leo and I didn't say much. We knew words were useless now. The silence between us was the silence of soldiers before a decisive battle. I had prepared Olivia's room, her old room. I put fresh sheets on the bed and a small vase of daisies on her nightstand. I wanted her to be surrounded by peace and love when she came home. At 11:30, Leo and I got in the car. He insisted on coming. "I'll sit in the back, hunched down, he won't see me. But I'm not letting you go alone," he said, leaving no room for argument. We drove in silence to Olivia's apartment complex. I killed the headlights from a block away and parked at the mouth of the alley, just as we'd planned. It was dark and deserted, lit only by the sickly yellow glow of a single street lamp. The wind howled between the brick buildings, sounding like a mournful cry. Midnight. 12:05. 12:10. Olivia didn't appear. "Something's wrong," Leo whispered from the back seat, his voice stretched taut. "Just a little longer," I told him and myself, though a knot of panic was starting to form in my stomach. Maybe she's waiting for him to fall into a deep sleep. We waited. Time crawled by at a torturous pace. Every small sound, a stray cat, the whistling wind made me jump. I stared at the opening of the alley, praying to see my daughter's silhouette emerge. But she never came. Half an hour passed, then an hour. The silence in the car became heavy, ominous. The hope in my chest began to wither, replaced by a cold, numbing fear. And then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. My heart stopped. I fumbled to answer it. "Hello?" On the other end of the line, it wasn't Olivia's voice, it was Vincent's, and he was laughing, a low, chilling sound. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his tone as casual as if we were chatting over coffee. "I'm guessing you're waiting for someone? Don't bother. She's not coming." "Your little plan. It was cute, but you underestimated me, and you underestimated my wife's loyalty." My ears were ringing. "What? What did you do to her?" I screamed, all fear forgotten. "Me? I didn't do a thing. She's the one who made a choice. She told me everything. About your secret meeting, about your little escape plan. Turns out, my love is still strong enough to keep her here. Or maybe it's the fear." He laughed again. "Oh, and I'm calling to warn you. Leave my family alone. If I see you or your precious son sniffing around here again, I can't guarantee Olivia's safety, understand?" Then he hung up. The phone slipped from my hand as Vincent's words echoed, sealing my failure. In the suffocating silence, I felt my daughter slipping further away. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring blankly at the empty alley, my mind a complete void. Vincent's words echoed in my head like a death sentence. "She told me everything. She's the one who made a choice." "Mom." Leo's voice from the back seat finally broke through my paralysis. "We have to get out of here, now." He was right. Staying here was pointless, even dangerous. With a monumental effort of will, I reached out a trembling hand and turned the key. The engine roared to life, its sound unnaturally loud in the quiet night. I spun the car around, the tires screeching on the asphalt, and we sped away, leaving the alley of our failure behind, plunging into an even deeper darkness. On the way home, neither of us said a word. I couldn't bring myself to look at Leo in the rearview mirror. I felt ashamed. I had dragged my son into this, let him witness my powerlessness, put us both in danger, and we had lost, utterly and humiliatingly. When we got home, the lights were blazing, making the house feel strangely unfamiliar. I collapsed onto the sofa, feeling an exhaustion so profound it was like I'd just finished a 24-hour surgery. Leo didn't sit. He paced the living room, his young face etched with a mixture of anger and resolve. "I don't believe it," he said suddenly, stopping to look right at me. "I don't believe Olivia would betray us like that." But Vincent said. I started, my voice weak. I don't care what he said. He cut me off. Something he rarely did. He's a manipulator. He's lying to divide us, to scare you. Didn't you hear her voice in the park? She was terrified. She wanted out. Then why didn't she come? I asked, the pain in my voice impossible to hide. Something must have happened, Leo said, his logical mind kicking in. Maybe he found out before she could leave. Maybe he followed her from the park. Or maybe she was forced to tell him. That last theory sent a shiver down my spine. The image of Olivia being interrogated by Vincent, threatened, forced to give up our plan, flashed in my mind. It was even worse than her betraying us willingly. It meant she was suffering a terrible retaliation in her own home, right at this very moment, and it was my fault. "Oh my God," I whispered, covering my mouth with my hand. "What have we done?" "We tried to help," Leo said, his voice firm, as if trying to rally both our spirits. "And we're not going to stop. Now we know for sure he's an abuser. We don't need her confession anymore. We need to act." "How?" I asked in desperation. "We have no proof the police can use. It's just our word against theirs." "Then we'll create the proof," Leo declared. That night, my 16-year-old son laid out a plan that was even bolder and more dangerous than anything we had done before. He reasoned that if Vincent was in financial trouble, he would soon become desperate. He would try to get money from the only source he thought was left: my family. "He'll come to us," Leo predicted. "And when he does, we have to be ready." Leo's plan was to plant a recording device in the house. If Vincent came and made threats, or tried to extort money, we would have proof. It was a huge gamble. It put us in direct confrontation with a man we knew was violent and unpredictable, but it seemed like the only option left. The next day, Leo used his savings to buy a tiny digital voice recorder online. When it arrived, we studied it together. It was as small as a button and could record for hours. We decided to hide it under the lip of the coffee table in the living room, where it would have the best audio range. The following days passed in a state of extreme tension. Every doorbell, every phone call made me jump. Together, we transformed the house from a crime scene back into a home. The silence from Olivia and Vincent was terrifying. It was like the calm before a hurricane. I couldn't stop imagining what was happening behind the closed doors of that apartment. Was Olivia okay? What had Vincent done to her after our plan was exposed? The questions tormented me day and night. And then, just as Leo had predicted, Vincent made his move. It was a Friday evening, about a week after that horrific night in the alley. Leo and I were having a silent dinner when the doorbell rang. We looked at each other, our hearts stopping in unison. Leo gave a slight nod, his hand reaching for his cell phone, ready on the emergency dial. I took a deep, steadying breath and went to open the door. It was Vincent. Alone. He stood there under the porch light, smiling. That smooth, fake smile I'd seen before now looked grotesque. He was wearing an expensive suit, looking completely calm. "Hello, Sarah," he said. "May I come in for a chat?" "What do you want?" I asked, my voice like ice, trying to block the doorway. "Just a friendly family conversation," he said, and without waiting for an invitation, he squeezed past me and walked into the house. I slammed the door, a wave of anger and fear rising in me. Leo stood silently in the dining room doorway, his eyes fixed on Vincent. Vincent casually walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa, the very sofa where my family had sat together countless times. He crossed his legs, looking around the room with an air of superiority. "Nice house," he commented. "Cozy. Must be worth a pretty penny." "Get to the point, Vincent. What are you doing here?" I said, standing in the middle of the room, keeping my distance. He stopped smiling. His expression turned cold, and for the first time, I saw the real monster behind the mask. "I'm here to make you an offer," he said, his voice even. "An offer I don't think you'll want to refuse. Olivia and I have a wonderful investment opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime chance, but we're a little short on capital." "I don't have any money for you," I said flatly. "Oh, I think you do," he said, raising an eyebrow. "I've done a little research. This house is paid off. You have a sizable retirement account. And then there's your mother's diamond jewelry, isn't there? I hear it's worth about $20,000. My blood ran cold. He had investigated me. He had been planning this. Olivia must have told him about the jewelry. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I'm not finished," he said, his voice turning menacing. He stood up and walked toward me. "Think about it, Sarah. This is an investment in your daughter's future. Don't you want to see her happy and prosperous?" "Happy?" I nearly shouted. "You call what you do to her happy? I saw the bruise on her face. I know what you've done to her." Vincent stopped, his face twitching for a second. "The little snitch," he muttered, then looked at me with fire in his eyes. "All right, no more nice guy. I need $50,000. By tomorrow, or else." "Or else what?" Leo's voice suddenly cut in from behind me. He had stepped out of the dining room, positioning himself in front of me. "What will you do?" Vincent looked at Leo, a contemptuous smirk on his face. "Well, if it isn't the little hero, what do you think you can do, kid?" "I'll call the police," Leo said, holding up his phone. "Go ahead," Vincent shrugged. "And tell them what? That your mother's son-in-law came over to ask for a loan? They'll laugh in your face." He stepped closer, now just a few feet away from us. "Listen to me, both of you. I'm not playing around. If I don't get the money by tomorrow, Olivia is going to have an accident, a very nasty accident. Maybe she'll slip in the bathtub or fall down the stairs. These things happen all the time, right?" The blatant threat stole my breath. He was openly threatening to kill my daughter. It was at that exact moment that I heard a small noise at the front door. The door creaked open, and Olivia stepped inside. She looked like a ghost. Her face was pale, her eyes vacant. She had followed Vincent here. "Olivia!" I cried out. Vincent turned, and when he saw his wife, he wasn't surprised. Instead, he smiled cruelly. "Just in time, my love. Come on in. Your mother and brother are being a little uncooperative." Olivia walked into the room, not looking at us, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Mom," she said, her voice a whisper, "please, just give him the money." "What are you talking about, Olivia?" I was stunned. "Didn't you hear what he just said? He's threatening you." "It's just a misunderstanding," she said, but her voice had no conviction. "He's just stressed. If we help him, everything will be okay." "No, Olivia. You can't keep doing this," I shouted, stepping toward her. "Look at yourself. Look at what he's done to you." "Stop it," Vincent roared, and he moved. In a flash, he grabbed Olivia's arm, yanking her toward him. "No," I screamed, lunging forward. "Stay away," Olivia shrieked, but her scream wasn't directed at Vincent. It was directed at me. In her extreme panic, torn between her abuser and our attempts to help, she had lost all reason. She flailed her arm, and her hand connected with something heavy on the small table by the door. It was a brass table lamp, an antique my husband had bought. "Leave us alone!" she screamed, her eyes wild with fear, and something else, something chemical. Leo rushed forward, trying to shield me. "Olivia, don't!" But it was too late. In a blind act of desperation, Olivia swung the lamp. Her target might have been me, it might have been the empty space in front of her, no one will ever know. But Leo was standing in the way. The solid brass lamp hit Leo's arm with a sickening, dry crack as he raised it to protect himself. I heard the distinct sound of bone snapping. Leo cried out in pain and crumpled to the floor. In that horrific moment, the entire room seemed to freeze. Olivia stood, stunned, the lamp falling from her hand with a clatter on the hardwood floor. Her expression shifted from rage to absolute horror as she saw her brother clutching his broken arm, writhing on the ground. "Leo!" I screamed, rushing to my son's side. Vincent, seeing the situation spiral out of control, didn't waste a second. "You fool!" he hissed at Olivia, then turned and bolted out the door, disappearing into the night. Olivia just stood there, a statue of a woman, her eyes wide, staring at the scene she had created. She looked at Leo, then at me, her face a mask of fear, regret, and utter despair. I had no time to think about her. All my nursing instincts took over. I knelt beside Leo. His right arm was bent at a sickening, unnatural angle. "Call 911, I commanded Olivia, my voice cold and devoid of any emotion. "Now!" My command seemed to snap her out of her stupor. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. I held my son, whispering reassurances in his ear, though I was shaking myself. Our cozy living room had become a crime scene. Blood, betrayal, and pain filled the space. The tiny recorder was still hidden under the table, having likely captured the entire nightmare. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about it. All I knew was that a final line had been crossed. My family was shattered, and I had no idea if we could ever pick up the pieces. The wail of ambulance and police sirens tore through the quiet night of our neighborhood. It was like a scream from the outside world, answering the silent scream inside my house. Time seemed to warp, stretching out into an agonizing eternity. Everything happened both in a flash and in a haunting slow motion. I knelt on the floor, holding Leo. He was groaning in pain, his face pale and slick with a cold sweat. I tore a tablecloth, using my ER skills to fashion a crude splint for his broken arm, trying to keep it as stable as possible. All around me was chaos. The brass lamp lay on the floor, shards from a shattered vase were scattered about, and then there was Olivia. She was huddled in a corner of the room, her hands clamped over her head, her body trembling uncontrollably. She was muttering nonsense, her eyes wide and vacant with horror. She wasn't my daughter, not the angry woman who had confronted me at the coffee shop. She was a lost, terrified child, drowning in the consequences of an act she hadn't fully controlled. I glanced at her, and for a moment, my anger was replaced by a heart-wrenching pity. I could see it clearly now. Her pupils were unnaturally dilated. She wasn't sober. She was high. Vincent hadn't just been abusing her physically. He had turned her into an addict, his puppet. The front door burst open. Paramedics and police officers flooded in. My warm living room was instantly transformed into a chaotic scene. "What happened here?" A tall police officer with a thick mustache asked, his voice authoritative. "My son," I said, my voice cracking. "He was attacked. His arm is broken." The paramedics immediately swarmed around Leo. They cut away my makeshift splint, applied a professional one, and gave him a shot of pain medication. Leo closed his eyes, his body relaxing slightly. Meanwhile, the officer, who I would later learn was Detective Miller, began to survey the scene. His eyes landed on the brass lamp, then on Olivia, trembling in the corner. "Who did this?" he asked, his tone unchanging. I hesitated. A part of me, the mother's instinct, wanted to protect my child. I wanted to lie, to make up a story about a robbery, but then I looked down at Leo, at his mangled arm, at the future that could be stolen from him, and I knew I couldn't. The truth, no matter how brutal, had to be told. Before I could answer, Olivia screamed. It was a piercing, desperate sound. "It was me. I did it, but I didn't mean to. I didn't want to." Detective Miller turned to look at her. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Tell me what happened." But Olivia couldn't calm down. She started talking, or rather, spewing a jumble of broken, incoherent words. Vincent, he made me. He left. He said he would kill us. The money. He needed the money. I didn't want to hurt Leo, my brother. Oh God, Leo." She broke down into hysterical sobs, wild and out of control. A young female officer stepped forward and gently put an arm around her. "Let's have you sit down. Take a deep breath." In the midst of this, the paramedics were loading Leo onto a stretcher. "We need to get him to the hospital immediately," one of them told me. "This is a serious injury. He'll need surgery." I nodded, getting to my feet. "I'm going with him." "Just a moment, ma'am," Detective Miller said, stopping me. "I need you to stay and give a statement. You're the primary witness." "But my son, my wife's a nurse," he said, a flicker of empathy in his eyes. "I know you're worried, but he's in good hands now. I need you to help me do my job. The man who caused this is still out there. We need to catch him." He was right. The rage I felt for Vincent surged back, stronger than ever. I nodded. I leaned down and kissed Leo's forehead. "I'll be there as soon as I can, sweetie. Be strong." Leo gave a slight nod, his eyes glassy from the pain medication. Then they wheeled him out. The ambulance doors slammed shut, the siren wailed to life, and then faded into the distance, leaving a terrifying silence in its wake. My house was now full of strangers. Police officers walked around, taking pictures, marking the scene. The female officer was trying to talk to Olivia, but my daughter seemed to have retreated into a state of shock, just sitting there, rocking back and forth and mumbling. Detective Miller led me into the kitchen, away from the chaos. He had me sit down and poured me a glass of water himself. "Now, I need you to tell me everything," he said, his voice calm but firm. "From the very beginning." And so I did. I told him everything. I told him about my first suspicions, the bruises, the calls for money. I told him about the meeting at the coffee shop, Olivia's denial. I told him about the failed rescue plan and Vincent's threatening phone call, and finally, I told him what happened tonight, the extortion, the threats, and Olivia's horrific act. I also gave him the voice recorder. I hid this under the coffee table. It might have recorded everything. Detective Miller took the small device, his eyes lighting up. "You did good, Miss Sarah. This could be what puts him away." While I was talking to the detective, another medical team was called in. They were there to assess Olivia. After examining her, they concluded she was heavily under the influence of a stimulant, likely cocaine or meth, combined with a state of extreme psychological shock. "We need to take her to the hospital for detox and a psychiatric evaluation," one of the medics told Detective Miller. And so, in the same night, both of my children were taken to the hospital in separate ambulances. One, the victim of an assault, the other, a victim of abuse and addiction, and also the perpetrator. I stood there, in my ruined home, feeling more alone and helpless than ever before. After Olivia was taken away, Detective Miller turned to me. "Miss Sarah, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your daughter will be facing criminal charges. Assault in the second degree, possibly more, depending on your son's condition." I nodded, a lump in my throat. I knew. "And Vincent?" "We've issued a statewide BOLO. Be on the lookout for Vincent Hayes on charges of extortion, making terroristic threats, and various drug and domestic violence charges, based on your testimony and what we found at his apartment." "You've already been there?" "Right after you told me. The apartment's empty. He's on the run, but he left a lot behind. Signs of heavy drug use, and we found some paperwork related to debts with some rather nasty loan sharks. This guy's in deep trouble." It was a small piece of good news, but it did little to ease my pain. Finally, after the police finished their work at the scene and left, I was allowed to go to the hospital. It was nearly 3 a.m. The hospital was quiet, filled with the cold glow of fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell I knew so well. I went to the ER first. Leo had been taken up to surgery. The attending physician told me his arm had suffered a complex fracture and would require pins and a metal plate. The surgery would take several hours. His future, his ability to play basketball, the normal function of his arm, it was all a big question mark. I sat in the surgical waiting room, my mind blank. I tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. I just sat there, staring at the closed doors, the weight of guilt pressing down on me. After a while, a nurse came to find me. "Are you Olivia Hayes' mother?" I nodded. "Your daughter is through the initial detox. She's sedated and resting now in the psychiatric observation unit. The doctor would like to speak with you." I followed the nurse to a different wing of the hospital. The doors here were locked. The psychiatrist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, met me in her office. "Hello, Sarah. I'm Dr. Evans," she said. "I'm so sorry for what your family is going through." She explained that Olivia's condition was complex. It wasn't just the drugs. Years of psychological abuse and manipulation had left deep scars. She was suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and what's known as Stockholm Syndrome, a psychological response where a hostage develops an attachment to their captor. Her actions tonight weren't entirely of her own volition, Dr. Evans explained. It was an explosive reaction of fear, panic, and dependency on her abuser, amplified by the effects of the drugs. She's going to need long-term intensive therapy. I listened, but the clinical terms washed over me. The only thing I heard was that my daughter was broken from the inside out. Dr. Evans told me that, by law, once Olivia was stable, she would be transferred to a secure medical facility to await her court date. One child in surgery, the other on her way to jail. My husband gone. My family, in every literal sense, was no more. I went back to the surgical waiting area and sat down in the cold plastic chair. Dawn was breaking outside the hospital window, a bleak, gray dawn. I had spent countless sleepless nights in this hospital caring for strangers, but tonight I was awake for my own, and I had never felt more powerless. The days and weeks that followed that fateful night were a long, drawn-out nightmare. My life was split in two, and so was I. One half of me was the mother at her son's hospital bedside, watching every vital sign, every pained flinch after his surgery. The other half was the mother navigating a complex legal and medical system, trying to save her lost daughter. I moved between these two worlds, the hospital and the courthouse, feeling like a ghost, existing but not truly living. Leo's surgery lasted nearly 5 hours. The lead surgeon, a man with steady hands and tired eyes, met with me afterward. He said the operation was a success. They had pieced the shattered bones back together and secured them with a titanium plate and 7 screws. "He's a very lucky young man," the doctor said. "If the blow had been a little harder, or at a different angle, it could have permanently damaged the radial nerve, which would have paralyzed his hand. As it is, he has a chance at a full recovery of function, but it's going to take a lot of time and physical therapy. It will be painful, and he'll never play basketball the way he used to." Those words were both a relief and a stab to the heart. Leo wouldn't be crippled, but a part of his youth, a part of his dream, had been stolen from him forever. When he woke up from the surgery, hazy from the anesthesia and pain medication, the first thing he asked me was, "How's Olivia, Mom?" My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Even in his own physical agony, he was thinking of his sister. I didn't know how to answer him. I just took his good hand, stroked his sweat-dampened hair, and said, "You just rest, sweetie. Everything's going to be okay." But I knew I was lying. Nothing was okay. Olivia's world was a different kind of nightmare. After a few days of detox and close observation in the hospital's psychiatric ward, she was deemed medically stable. Stable was such a cold, clinical word. It meant she was no longer an immediate danger to herself or others. But her spirit was in pieces. I was allowed to visit her once before she was transferred. The room was stark white, the furniture minimalist to prevent self-harm. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed in a baggy patient gown. She was more lucid, no longer in the panicked state of that night, but this lucidity was almost more frightening. She was silent, her empty eyes staring at a fixed point on the white wall. She had lost even more weight. Her cheekbones jutted out, her hair was a tangled mess. She didn't look up when I came in. I pulled a chair over and sat in front of her. "Olivia," I said, my voice hoarse. She slowly turned her head, and when her eyes focused on my face, I saw they were filled with tears. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Leo, how is he?" "He's out of surgery. He's going to be okay," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. She closed her eyes, and 2 tears traced paths down her gaunt cheeks. "It's my fault. It's all my fault." "No," I said, even though a part of me was screaming the opposite. "It's Vincent's fault. He did this to you." But I was the one holding the lamp. She sobbed, her body starting to shake. "I was the one who swung it." I saw Leo's face, the look in his eyes. "Mom, what have I done? I'm a monster." I reached out and took her cold, limp hand. "You're not a monster. You're sick, Olivia. You're a victim." "I don't deserve to be forgiven," she said, shaking her head frantically. "I don't deserve anything." We sat there in silence, only her quiet sobs filling the room. I didn't know what to say to comfort her. All words felt hollow in the face of such immense pain and regret. Our conversation was cut short by the arrival of 2 police officers and a public defender assigned to Olivia's case. It was time. They had come to take her into custody. The metallic click of the handcuffs in that sterile white room is a sound that will haunt me forever. Olivia didn't resist. She just stood there, head bowed, letting them lead her away like a lifeless doll. Before she walked out the door, she looked back at me one last time. In her eyes, I saw no anger or blame. I saw only a bottomless emptiness and a silent, desperate apology. I stood there long after they were gone, staring at the empty room, trying to breathe. In the same hospital, my 2 children were on 2 completely opposite paths. One was beginning a journey of physical recovery. The other was beginning a journey to face the justice system. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers, prosecutors, and social workers. Our little voice recorder became the star witness. The tape had captured the entire conversation, from Vincent's investment pitch and extortion threats to his admission of abusing Olivia and his threat to kill her. It was irrefutable proof. Based on that and my testimony, the district attorney's office built a solid case against Vincent. A nationwide warrant was issued for his arrest, but he had vanished without a trace, like a ghost. Olivia's case, meanwhile, was far more complicated. The prosecutor, a man named O'Malley, was tough. "I understand your daughter is a victim," he told me in a meeting. "But we cannot ignore the fact that she inflicted a serious injury upon her brother. Actions have consequences." Olivia's lawyer, a young woman named Maria, worked tirelessly. She argued that Olivia had acted in a state of diminished capacity, under the influence of drugs and long-term abuse syndrome. She submitted Dr. Evans's report and pleaded with the court to consider an alternative to prison. Olivia's hearing took place on a rainy Denver day. The gray sky matched my mood. I sat in the front row, my heart pounding like a war drum. Leo, still in a sling and in pain, insisted on coming. He sat beside me, silent and solemn. Olivia was let in, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. She looked small and fragile. When she saw us, she quickly looked down, unable to meet our eyes. The hearing was brief. The prosecutor presented the case. Maria made her mitigating arguments, but the turning point came from someone no one expected. When the judge asked if the victim wished to make a statement, Leo stood up. The courtroom fell silent. My son, his right arm in a sling, slowly walked to the witness stand. He didn't look at the judge. He turned and looked directly at Olivia. "Your Honor," he began, his voice still young but filled with an incredible gravity. "The person sitting over there is my sister. She taught me how to read. She protected me from bullies. She was my hero." Olivia looked up, her eyes swimming in tears. "What she did to me was wrong," Leo continued. "It hurt, a lot, and I'll probably never be able to play basketball again. But I know, in my heart, that the person who swung that lamp was not my real sister. My real sister was stolen, tortured, and poisoned by someone else. That someone is Vincent Hayes. She is not a criminal. She's a prisoner of war who has just been rescued from enemy territory, and what she needs now isn't another prison. She needs help. She needs to heal." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I already lost my sister once. Please, don't make me lose her again." When Leo finished, the courtroom was completely silent. I could hear a few of the jurors sniffling. I was crying silently, tears of pride, of pain, and of a boundless love for my brave son. Olivia had her head down on the table, her shoulders shaking. Leo's words had a profound impact. The judge, a stern-looking older man, looked at Leo for a long time. After a recess, he delivered a compassionate sentence. Olivia was found guilty of assault, but instead of a prison sentence, the judge handed down a different kind of verdict. She was sentenced to 3 years, to be served in a secure state-run drug and mental health treatment facility. After completing the program, if she made good progress, she would be eligible for parole, followed by 5 years of strict probation. It was a sliver of light in the darkness, a combination of justice and mercy. Olivia would pay for her actions, but she would also get the help she desperately needed. After the hearing, as they led Olivia away, she passed by us. She stopped for a second and looked right at Leo. "Thank you," she whispered, a universe of regret and gratitude in those 2 words. "I'm sorry." Leo just gave a slight nod. Light and shadow. That was the essence of the verdict. The light of compassion and a second chance, but also the shadow of the unchangeable truth. My daughter was a convicted felon, and my family had a scar that would never fully heal. As we walked out of the courthouse, the rain had stopped. A few weak rays of sun were trying to break through the gray clouds. I took Leo's good hand in mine. "Let's go home, son," I said. Home, the house that now held just the 2 of us. The legal battle was over for now, but the longest, hardest journey, the journey of healing our wounded souls, was just beginning. And we would have to face it, together, with whatever strength and love we had left. 16 years. It sounds like a lifetime, doesn't it? But to me, sometimes it feels like it went by in the blink of an eye, and other times it stretches on like a wound that refuses to heal. 16 years. Enough time for a teenage boy to become a man, for black hair to turn the color of salt and pepper, and for the sharpest pains to dull into a constant low-grade ache, a part of who you are. Those first few years after the trial were the hardest. Our house felt too big, too quiet. The sound of Olivia's laughter no longer echoed in the hallway. Her room remained closed, a reluctant memorial to a past that was gone. Leo and I, the two of us, had to learn to live in our new reality. We were a family of two, bound together by a shared tragedy. Leo's recovery was a battle. His right arm, once out of the cast, was stiff and weak. The first physical therapy sessions were torture. I watched my son, a proud athlete, bite his lip to keep from crying out in pain just trying to curl his fingers. Many nights, I heard him crying softly in his room, not from the physical pain, but from the loss of his basketball dream, from the helpless anger at his fate. But from the ashes of that old dream, a new fire was lit. In the process of fighting to regain function in his own arm, Leo found a new purpose. He became fascinated by the complexity of the human body, by its incredible capacity for recovery. He started reading everything he could find about physical therapy, about neurological rehabilitation. The boy who had dreamed of being a basketball star was now talking about muscle groups and neural pathways with a startling passion. I think I want to do this, Mom," he told me one evening after a grueling therapy session. "I want to help other people who've been hurt like me, get their lives back." And that's when I knew that while Vincent and Olivia had taken so much from my son, they couldn't take his compassionate heart or his resilient spirit. Leo graduated from high school with top honors and got a scholarship to the University of Colorado for their kinesiology program. He threw himself into his studies as a way to forget the past and build a future. Olivia's life, meanwhile, unfolded behind the walls of the treatment facility. As per the court's ruling, she had to undergo an intensive drug and psychological therapy program for at least 2 years. I was allowed to visit her every 2 weeks. Those visits were a heartbreaking experience. The facility was clean and professional, but it was still a prison. The locked doors, the guards, the strict rules. The first time I saw Olivia there, she had cut her hair short. She looked sober and healthier, but her eyes still held a deep, profound sadness. We would sit across from each other at a metal table. Our conversations were stilted at first. We talked about the weather, my health, Leo's studies. We avoided the main topic, the ghost of that horrific night, as if speaking its name would summon it back to devour us both. But time and therapy slowly began to break down that wall of silence. Olivia started to open up. She told me about her group therapy sessions, where for the first time in her life, she had to confront the demon of her addiction. She told me about the nightmares, the unrelenting guilt. "They teach us here that addiction is a disease, not a moral failing," she said during one visit, "but I still can't forgive myself. A disease isn't an excuse for what I did to Leo." I didn't know what to say. I could only listen. Leo didn't visit Olivia for those first 2 years. I didn't push him. I understood that his wounds needed time to heal, both physical and emotional. He needed the space to put himself back together before he could face the person who had broken him. Olivia understood and accepted it. "He has every right to hate me," she would often say. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face in that moment. I deserve his hatred." After 2.5 years, thanks to her excellent progress in therapy, Olivia was granted parole. She was released, but under 5 years of strict probation. She had to hold a job, attend weekly Narcotics Anonymous, NA meetings, and submit to regular drug testing. The day she was released, I was the only one there to pick her up. She walked out of the iron gates with just a small duffel bag in her hand. She took a deep breath of free air, then looked at me, her eyes hesitant. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said. "Let's go home, honey," I replied. But Olivia shook her head. "I can't go home, Mom. That house, it holds too many painful memories, and I can't face Leo right now. I need to get on my own 2 feet first." She had a plan. She had found a job at a laundromat and rented a small room in a different part of town. She wanted to start over, quietly and humbly. I respected her decision, though my heart ached. I drove her to her tiny bare room. Before I left, she hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I'm going to try to make you proud of me again." And she kept her word. The years that followed were a testament to the power of repentance and human will. Olivia worked hard. From the laundromat, she moved to a warehouse job, and then, with the help of her probation officer, she found a job at an animal shelter. She seemed to find a measure of peace in caring for abandoned animals. She lived an incredibly simple life. She didn't shop, she didn't go out. Every dollar she earned, after rent and living expenses, went into a savings account. She attended her NA meetings faithfully. She stayed clean, a quiet battle she fought every single day. But the emotional wounds were harder to heal. She lived a solitary life, haunted by her past. She had cut off all contact with her old friends. Her only family was me. We met once a week, usually at a small diner. There was still an awkwardness to our conversations, but slowly, warmth began to return. As for Vincent, he had vanished into thin air. The police never found him. Sometimes, I wondered if he was still alive, or if his loan sharks had caught up with him. But then I realized it didn't matter anymore. He had caused his destruction, and now it was up to us, the survivors, to clean up the mess. Time passed. Leo graduated from college with honors, then went on to get his master's and doctorate in physical therapy. He became a leading expert in his field, sought after by hospitals. He bought his own small house. His right arm, though never as flexible as it once was and still bearing a long scar, became a symbol of his journey. It was no longer a weakness, but a source of strength, a special connection to his patients. 16 years. I had retired, content with my small garden and my books. Leo, at 32, was a successful and respected doctor. Olivia, at 40, was a quiet woman who lived a reclusive but peaceful life. She still worked at the animal shelter and had become the manager. The relationship between them remained a void. They hadn't seen each other in 16 years. Leo never mentioned her. Olivia never dared to ask about him. Between them was a wall of silence, built of pain and guilt. I had tried to be a bridge a few times, but they both shied away. I knew this was a wound that only they could heal for each other, and perhaps enough time still hadn't passed. I thought things would just continue on like that my family would forever be three broken pieces, existing in parallel but never fitting back together. I had accepted it. I had learned to live with it. But fate, in its cruel irony, had other plans. On a cold Tuesday evening in November, 16 years and 3 months after that fateful night, my phone rang. It was Leo. "Mom?" His voice on the other end was rushed, with an agitation I rarely heard. "Can you come to the hospital? Street Joseph's, the emergency room. Something's—" "You need to be here." "What is it, Leo? Are you okay?" I asked, my heart starting to pound. "I'm fine. It's not me. Just come. Please hurry." He hung up before I could ask more. A familiar sense of dread crept into my chest. I grabbed my coat and keys and rushed out of the house, not knowing that I was driving toward a confrontation I thought would never happen. I didn't know that the past, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to surface, and this time, it was returning in the form of a death sentence, delivered by my daughter's own ravaged body. Driving to Street Joseph's, the familiar hospital now felt alien, its antiseptic smell and beeping machines heavy with dread. I saw Leo immediately. He was standing at the end of the hall, near the critical care area, talking to another doctor. He was wearing his hospital whites, but he didn't look like a doctor. He looked like the 16-year-old boy from 16 years ago, lost and bewildered. When he saw me, he quickly ended his conversation and walked swiftly toward me. "Mom," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "Thanks for coming." "What is it, Leo?" "You're scaring me," I said, grabbing his arm. It was ice cold. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, a complex expression I couldn't read. Then he let out a long breath. "Follow me." He led me through the crowded hallways into a quieter section, a waiting area for patients' families. He stopped in front of a small room, the door slightly ajar. "Before we go in," he said, his voice dropping even lower, "I need you to prepare yourself. The person in there, she's in very bad shape." "Who?" "Leo. Who are you talking about?" My patience was gone. Leo closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering his courage. When he opened them, I saw a world of pain in them. "It's Olivia." Just those two words, but they hit with the force of a bomb. My whole body went rigid, my ears were ringing. Olivia, here, in this hospital, in very bad shape. How is that possible?" I stammered, my brain struggling to process the information. "What happened to her? Was it an accident?" Leo shook his head. Not an accident, Mom. She was brought in from a low-income housing unit on the west side. A neighbor called 911 when they found her collapsed in the hallway. By the time she got here, she was barely conscious. But what's wrong with her? I pressed. Leo took a deep breath before he said the next words. Cold clinical terms I had heard and spoken 1,000 times, but never thought I would hear about my own daughter. End-stage liver failure, he said. Cirrhosis, a direct result of her past alcohol and drug abuse. Even though she's been clean for so many years, the damage to her body was irreversible. Her liver, it's basically shut down. My legs felt weak. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Liver failure, end stage. As a nurse, I knew what those words meant. They meant a death sentence. No, that can't be, I whispered. She's been so healthy. She's tried so hard. I know, Mom, Leo said, his voice breaking. But sometimes, trying isn't enough to erase what's already been done. Our bodies have long memories. I looked at my son, and for the first time in years, I saw the pain of the 16-year-old boy in the eyes of the 32-year-old man. The wound I thought had healed was still there, still bleeding. Why? Why me? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. I was on call tonight in the rehab department. They paged me for a consult on a Jane Doe. They said the patient had an old, severe scar on her arm, like a traumatic injury. They thought maybe I could recognize something from old medical records. He stopped, swallowing hard. And when I walked into that room, I knew. Not from the scar on her arm, from another one. A tiny, faded scar on her forehead, right at her hairline. She fell off her bike in the 6th grade. Remember? I was the one who put the bandage on it. Tears began to stream down my face. I remembered it perfectly. I just stood there, Leo continued, his voice filled with disbelief. Looking at this frail, jaundiced woman in the bed and realizing it was my sister. The sister I haven't seen in 16 years. And I'm her doctor. Life has a cruel sense of humor, doesn't it, Mom? I didn't know what to say. I could only reach up and cup his face in my hands. I'm so sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry. He shook his head, gently pushing my hands away. It's not your fault. Now's not the time for that. You should go in. She's just woken up a bit. She asked for you. I took a deep breath, trying to choke back my tears, trying to put on the professional armor of a nurse, of a strong mother. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small and dim, lit only by the glow of the monitors. The smell of sickness and despair hung in the air. Olivia lay on the bed, looking small and fragile under the white blanket. A tangle of wires and tubes connected her to the machines that beeped and whirred with a cold indifference. But it was the sight of her that shocked me to my core. This wasn't the Olivia I knew. Her skin had a sickly yellow tinge. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her arms were stick-thin, marked with the tracks of IV lines. Her abdomen was swollen, a sign that her liver could no longer filter fluids. My 40-year-old daughter looked like an old woman. The past had come back to collect a terrible debt, and it was taking my daughter's life, piece by piece. As I approached, her eyes slowly fluttered open. They were dull and tired, but they recognized me. "Mom," she rasped, her voice weak and hoarse. I rushed to her side and took her hand. It was cold and slightly swollen. "I'm here, sweetie, I'm here." A faint, weak smile touched her cracked lips. I must look terrible, huh? I tried to smile back, though my throat was closing up. "You just need some rest. You'll be back on your feet in no time." Another lie, but this time it wasn't to reassure myself. It was to give her a sliver of hope, no matter how fragile. She shook her head slowly. "No, Mom, I know. I know I'm not going to make it this time. I can feel it." A racking cough seized her, and her frail body curled in on itself. "Don't talk like that, Olivia. You have to be strong," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm so tired, Mom," she said, her eyes gazing at the ceiling. "Tired of fighting. For 16 years I've tried. I've really tried. I've lived a clean life. I've tried to be a good person. But maybe it was just too late." My own tears started to fall again. "It's never too late." "It is, Mom." She turned to look at me, and in her jaundiced eyes, I saw a heartbreakingly peaceful acceptance. I only have one regret, that I was never brave enough to apologize to Leo. I let my shame eat me alive. I wasted 16 years. She paused, catching her breath. Is he here? I nodded. Yes, he's right outside. He was the one who recognized you. A flicker of something surprise, maybe shame, crossed Olivia's eyes. Really? Really. She was quiet for a long time, lost in her own thoughts. He must hate me so much. No, sweetie, he doesn't hate you, he's just... I hesitated, searching for the right word. Heartbroken. Could I see him? She asked, her voice barely audible. Just for a minute, I need to say something. I nodded, quickly wiping my eyes. Let me go get him. I walked out of the room, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. Leo was still there, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, a solitary guard standing watch over an unnamed sorrow. She wants to see you, I said. Leo didn't move. He just stared at the floor. I don't know if I can. Mom. Leo. I put my hand on his arm. You don't have to do anything. You just have to listen. Do this, not for her, but for you, so you won't have any regrets later. He stood there for a long moment, wrestling with his own demons. Finally, he took a deep breath and nodded. He went into the room alone. I stood outside, watching through the small glass window in the door. I saw Leo walk to the bedside. Olivia tried to push herself up a little. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Olivia's lips moving. Leo just stood there, listening, his face a mask. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Then I saw Leo give a slight nod. Olivia closed her eyes, and a single tear escaped and traced a path down her temple. Leo turned and walked out of the room. He brushed past me without a word, walked to the end of the hall, and disappeared through a door. A few moments later, Olivia's attending physician, the one Leo had been speaking with earlier, came to find me. He was a young man with a compassionate face. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Dr. Chen, he said. I am so sorry about your daughter's condition. He confirmed what Leo had told me. Olivia's liver was almost completely destroyed. Her kidney function was also failing rapidly. We're doing everything we can to stabilize her, doctor, Chen said. Dialysis, fluids, supportive medications. But these are just temporary measures. Her only chance of survival is a liver transplant. Hope. A word I hadn't dared to think. A transplant? I repeated. Is that possible? Dr. Chen sighed. It's complicated. She's far too weak to survive a major surgery right now. And with her history of substance abuse, getting her on the national transplant list is next to impossible. There are thousands of people waiting, and the protocols are very strict. The small flicker of hope inside me was extinguished. So, you're saying, there's nothing that can be done? Dr. Chen hesitated. Theoretically, there is one other option. A living donor transplant. A healthy relative with a compatible blood type and other matching factors can donate a portion of their liver. But, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood. But in that moment, there was no hesitation in my mind. There was only a single, clear, powerful thought. Doctor, I said, my voice suddenly strangely steady, test me, right now. I want to know if I'm a match. Dr. Chen looked at me, his expression one of pure astonishment. Mrs. Hayes, do you understand what you're saying? This is an incredibly risky and major surgery, especially at your age. I'm a nurse? I cut him off, my tone leaving no room for argument. I understand better than anyone. Please, test me. I am her mother, and I will do whatever it takes to save my daughter. That night, while Olivia fought for her life, I sat in a phlebotomy chair and let them draw vial after vial of my blood. I felt no fear. I didn't think of it as a sacrifice. I just felt a strange sense of peace. 16 years ago, I had helplessly watched my family fall apart, but tonight, fate had given me a chance to mend, to redeem, a chance to do it over, not with words, but with an act of unconditional love, and I was not going to let it slip away. The hours after I demanded to be tested passed in a strange, suspended state. I sat in the cold plastic chairs outside the intensive care unit where Olivia had been moved. I couldn't go in. only watch her through a thick glass window. She lay there, still and silent amidst a forest of machines, her life measured in the blinking numbers on the screens and the soulless dance of green waves. I had stopped crying. The tears seemed to have run dry, replaced by an intense focus, an almost meditative stillness. My nurse's mind automatically analyzed the situation. I assessed the risks of a liver donation at age 72, infection, anesthesia complications, a long recovery. I weighed the benefits, a chance at life for Olivia, a chance to heal what was broken. The cold, hard data ran through my head, but it all came down to a single conclusion, one that came not from my brain, but from my heart. I had to do this. Leo didn't come back. I knew he was somewhere in this hospital, probably in his office, or pacing the quiet hallways, fighting his own battle. The battle between the pain of a victim and the compassion of a doctor, between the resentment of a brother and the love for his lost sister. I didn't call him. I knew he needed space. My decision was mine alone. I didn't want it to become a burden for my son. Around 6 a.m, as the first rays of a new day began to filter through the hospital windows, Dr. Chen came to find me. His face was tired, but his eyes held an undisguised surprise. "Sarah," he said, sitting down next to me, "we have the preliminary test results, and it's unbelievable." I held my breath. "Not only do you share the same blood type as your daughter," he continued, "but your human leukocyte antigen, HLA, markers are a near-perfect match. It's not unheard of for a mother and daughter to be highly compatible, but this level of compatibility is truly remarkable. Medically speaking, you are the ideal donor for her." A wave of relief and joy, the first in many long hours, washed over me. So we can do the surgery?" Dr. Chen nodded, then hesitated. "Technically, yes, but that's not the only issue. We ran a full health screening on you last night. Your heart, lungs, kidneys, they're all in excellent condition for your age. You've lived a very healthy life. However, this is still an extremely high-risk operation. Do you understand? We're talking about removing more than half of your liver. The recovery will be long and painful. And there are always unforeseeable risks." "I understand," I said, my voice firm. "I accept all the risks." Dr. Chen looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for any hint of hesitation. "All right," he finally said. "But we have one more hurdle, the hospital's ethics committee. Before we proceed with any living donor transplant, we need their approval. They need to be sure the donor is making the decision voluntarily, without coercion, and is fully informed of all the risks. They also need to assess the psychological state of both the donor and the recipient." He checked his watch. "They're convening an emergency meeting at 9 this morning. I'll present your case, but you and your son, Dr. Leo, will also have to speak with them." "Leo?" I was surprised. "Why him?" "He's the only other immediate family for both you and the patient, Doctor," Chen explained. "Furthermore, he's a physician at this hospital and is directly involved in the family's complex history. His opinion will carry a great deal of weight." A new unease crept in. I hadn't wanted to involve Leo in this decision, but now, not only was he involved, he was a deciding factor. The meeting with the ethics committee took place in a large, formal, and cold conference room. Around a long wooden table sat a dozen people: doctors, lawyers, psychologists, and hospital administrators. They all looked at me with a mixture of professional scrutiny and curiosity. I answered all their questions calmly and clearly. I affirmed that my decision was completely voluntary. I reiterated that I understood all the risks. I explained that, to me, the greatest risk was doing nothing and watching my daughter die. After I had finished, the chairman of the committee, an older surgeon, said, "Thank you, Sarah. We'd like to speak with Dr. Leo now." I walked out of the room, and Leo, who had been waiting outside, walked in. He didn't look at me. His face was a tense, unreadable mask. The conference room door closed, leaving me alone with my anxiety. I had no idea what my son would say. Would he support my decision? Or would he object, recounting the story of his broken arm and 16 years of pain, and convince the board that Olivia didn't deserve such a sacrifice? The power to save or condemn his sister, ironically, now rested in his hands. I didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, the door opened. Leo came out first, still wearing that impassive expression. He walked straight down the hall without a word. Then Dr. Chen motioned for me to come back in. I sat down in the same chair, my heart pounding. The chairman looked at me, then at the other members. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "we have heard from you, from Dr. Chen, and from your son. This is one of the most complex cases we have ever reviewed. After careful consideration, the committee has decided to approve the surgery." The air I didn't realize I'd been holding rushed out of my lungs. I nodded, fighting back tears of joy. "However," the chairman continued, "we have one condition. Your daughter, the patient Olivia, must be lucid and give her explicit consent. We cannot perform a transplant on a patient who is not aware or refuses it. Dr. Chen says she is more alert now. What happens next is up to her." I understood. The first battle was won, but the final one was yet to be fought. I went back to the ICU. Olivia was indeed more awake. The fog in her eyes had lifted a little, though her body was still incredibly weak. I sat down beside her bed and took her hand. I told her everything, as gently as I could. I told her about the test results, the miraculous match, the committee's decision. I told her that we had a chance, a path to life. When I finished, I expected to see a flicker of hope, a tear of joy, or at least surprise. Instead, I saw pure, unadulterated horror dawn on her gaunt face. She began to shake her head, weakly at first, then with more force. "No," she rasped. "No, Mom, no." "Olivia, what are you talking about?" I was stunned. "This is our only chance." "No." Her voice grew stronger, though it still trembled. Tears began to stream from her jaundiced eyes. "You can't do that. You're 72 years old. You can't risk your life for me." "It's not a risk," I said, trying to soothe her. "The doctors said it will be fine." "They're lying," she nearly shouted, trying to sit up but collapsing back against the pillows, gasping for breath. "I know about these surgeries. I've heard them talking. It's dangerous. I can't. I can't take anything more from you." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pain that was greater than physical. "Don't you see? I've already taken so much from you. I took your peace. I took Leo's youth. I made your lives a living hell. I already owe you both a lifetime. I can't take a piece of your life too." She broke down into racking sobs, the cries of despair and self-hatred. "Please, just let me go. Let me die in peace. It's the punishment I deserve. It's the only way I can ever pay my debt." I had been prepared for medical risks, for the committee's objections, for Leo's inner conflict, but I had never been prepared for this. I had never been prepared for the very child I was trying to save to be the one to refuse that salvation. I tried to reason with her. I talked about the future. I talked about second chances. I told her that the greatest punishment for me would be to watch her die. But Olivia just closed her eyes and shook her head, tears streaming relentlessly. The wall of guilt she had built around herself for 16 years was too high, too thick. She had already sentenced herself, and she would not allow anyone, not even her own mother, to appeal that sentence. Our standoff lasted the rest of the day. Nurses and doctors came and went, their faces etched with sympathy. There was nothing they could do. Legally, they could not force a patient. As sunset painted the sky outside the hospital window in shades of orange and red, I felt completely and utterly defeated. I had lost. For the second time in my life, I was watching my daughter slip through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. And then, the door to the room opened. Leo walked in. He had changed out of his hospital whites and was wearing street clothes. His face was no longer a mask. It was etched with exhaustion and pain. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to the other side of the bed to stand opposite Olivia. Olivia opened her eyes. When she saw her brother, a flicker of panic crossed her face. She turned her head away, as if she couldn't bear to look at him. Leo stood there for a long moment, just looking at his sister. The room was so quiet I could hear the beating of my own heart. And then, he spoke. His voice held no anger, no resentment, only a deep, profound sadness, the weariness of a lifetime. The space in the ICU room seemed to shrink. leaving only the three of us and the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, a weak but persistent drumbeat for Olivia's fading life. The sunset outside the window was at its most brilliant moment before dying, casting streaks of orange and purple on the white walls, on the faces of people standing on the precipice of life, death, and forgiveness. Leo stood there, by the bed, a tall, silent figure. He looked at Olivia, who was trying to turn her face away, avoiding his gaze like a guilty person avoiding the light of justice. I sat still, holding my breath, feeling like a mere spectator in the drama of my own life. This final act, the leading role, was not mine to play. Finally, Leo spoke. His voice wasn't that of a doctor, nor was it the voice of a wounded 16-year-old boy. It was the voice of a man who had been through hell and back, tired but wise. "You're wrong," he said, his voice low and even. Each word dropped into the silence of the room like a stone. Olivia flinched slightly but still didn't turn back. "You're wrong to think that your death is payment," Leo continued. "You're wrong. You think if you die, the debt will be paid, everything will be reset to zero, and you'll be at peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That's not how it works, Olivia. If you die, Mom's heart will never heal. She'll live the rest of her life in torment, wondering if she could have done something different. She'll lose both of her children, not just one." He moved, walking around the head of the bed to stand in Olivia's line of sight, forcing her to look at him. "And I," he said, using the detached pronoun for the first time, "for the rest of my life, I'll have to live with the question of whether I could have done something different, whether my words could have saved you, whether my silence was the thing that killed you. Your death won't free anyone. It will just be another prison, an invisible one that traps the living. You took a lot from us in the past." He emphasized the last two words. "Don't take our future too." Tears began to stream down Olivia's cheeks. She looked at her brother, her eyes wide with a mixture of astonishment and agony. Leo leaned down a little closer, his voice softening, becoming more intimate, like the voice of the little brother from long ago. "Live, Olivia. Live and atone by living well. Live to take care of Mom when she's old after this surgery. Live to give me the chance, even just the smallest chance, to call you my sister again, instead of just a patient." He held out his good hand, the hand of a physical therapist, the hand that had helped hundreds of people reclaim their lives. But this time he didn't touch Olivia. He just let it hang there. An invitation, a choice. "Debts aren't paid with death," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "They're paid with life. Live, sis. Give us all a chance to heal." Leo's words, the words he had held back for 16 years, finally broke through Olivia's last wall of defense. The shell of guilt, of self-punishment she had built around herself for so long, shattered into a million pieces. She began to cry, not the sobs of despair, but the sobs of release. A cry like a child who has finally found their way home after a long storm. She slowly lifted her own thin, swollen hand and took Leo's. "Okay," she sobbed. I'll live." In that moment, the heart monitor beside the bed seemed to beep a little brighter. As for me, I couldn't hold back any longer. I buried my head in my hands and let the tears of relief and gratitude flow. My two children, after a long and painful journey, had finally found their way back to each other. The surgery was performed the next day. It was a dual operation, taking place simultaneously in two adjacent operating rooms. Olivia and I, mother and daughter, were separated by a wall but connected by a life being shared. I don't remember much about my own surgery, just the cold of the operating room, the bright lights, and then a deep sleep. When I woke up in the recovery room, the first sensation was a sharp, intense pain in my side, but the second, stronger sensation was a profound sense of peace. Leo was the first person I saw. He was sitting by my bed, still in his hospital scrubs. His eyes were dark with lack of sleep, but they shone with relief. "How are you feeling, Mom?" he asked, his voice thick with worry. "Sore," I said honestly. "But I'm okay. How's Olivia?" A small smile, the first real smile I had seen on his face in days, touched his lips. "The surgery was a success, Mom. Both of them. The portion of your liver was transplanted. Her vitals are stabilizing. Dr. Chen said her body is accepting the new organ very well. There's still a long road ahead, but she has a chance. I closed my eyes, a single tear escaping. Thank you, Leo, thank you. I didn't do anything, he cut me off. I just told the truth. The recovery that followed was a series of long, slow days. For me, it was pain, learning to walk and breathe again. For Olivia, it was a more complex battle. Her body had to learn to live with a new liver, and her soul had to learn to live with a new life, one no longer haunted by guilt. Leo became the bridge between us. Every day, after his work, he would walk back and forth between the hospital rooms of his mother and his sister. He helped me stand up, helped me take my first steps. He sat by Olivia's side, reading to her, telling her small stories from the hospital, helping her eat her first spoonfuls of broth. The awkwardness between them was still there. Their conversations still had long pauses, but in those pauses, there was no longer resentment or distance. It was the silence of two souls learning together how to forgive each other, and more importantly, to forgive themselves. A month later, I was discharged. 2 weeks after that, Olivia was also allowed to go home. But she didn't go back to her small rented room. She came home to my house, to the house she had left in anger, to the house where she had caused a tragedy. The first few days were difficult. The house seemed to echo with painful memories, but we didn't run from it. Together, we cleaned the living room, put away the old brass lamp, rearranged the furniture. 1 year later, it was a Sunday afternoon in late autumn, the Denver air crisp and cool. The golden sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, where Olivia and I were preparing dinner. She was healthy again. The jaundiced skin had been replaced by a rosy glow. She had gained weight, and her honey-colored hair had grown long again, pulled back in a neat bun. The long scars on both our abdomens were a permanent reminder of what we had been through, but they were no longer wounds. They were symbols of survival. Leo arrived soon after, carrying a bouquet of bright sunflowers. He no longer wore that tense expression from the old days. His smile was more frequent now. We sat around the dining table, the same table from 16 years ago, but the atmosphere was completely different. We talked, we laughed. Leo told a story about a stubborn elderly patient. Olivia talked about an adorable puppy that had just been adopted from the shelter. I just sat there, listening, my heart filled with a simple happiness I thought I would never have again. After dinner, as Olivia and I were washing dishes together, she said suddenly, her voice very quiet, "Mom, I still feel guilty every single day." I stopped what I was doing and turned to look at her. "I know," she continued, her eyes on the soapy water. "I know that sorry isn't enough. It will never be enough. But I want you and Leo to know that every day I wake up with your liver inside of me, I promise myself that I will live a life worthy of that sacrifice. I will not waste it, not ever again." I didn't say anything. I just wrapped my arms around my 41-year-old daughter. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just as she had done so many times in the past. But this time, there were no tears. There was only peace. Leo walked into the kitchen just then. He saw us hugging, and he just smiled. He came over, and for the first time in nearly 20 years, he put his hand on his sister's shoulder, a gentle, affectionate pat. "This is my family. Not perfect, full of scars, pieced back together from the fragments of tragedy. But it's my family. A family rebuilt not on forgetting, but on forgiveness. A family that walked through the darkness and found its way home, not by erasing the past, but by learning to live with it. Happiness, I've realized, isn't a life without storms. Happiness is when, after the storm, you look around and see that the people you love most are still there, beside you, ready to rebuild. And for that, I am eternally grateful."